I know he's excited about training camp, which is in full gear. Our good friend Lloyd Vance does a great job covering the NFL. Good follow on Twitter, correspondent for the NFL Network, and, of course, kind enough to join us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. You got your pads on or what? You ready for 2 days?
It just brings back great memories. But it's just the smell in the air. We're not there yet, but we're getting close to football time out there.
I was saying this before we potted you on. I was looking around the NFC, and we were talking about how hard it is to repeat, right? And we know this. In any sport, it's very hard to defend. It's very hard to get back to the playoffs. But right on paper, if you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, they're getting some of the players that were banged up and hurt last year, marquee players back. They've got a ton of depth. And I tried to make a case for these other teams in the NFC. And right now, I mean, the Eagles should be the clear-cut favorite out of the NFC East, and they should be that top team that you would think has the best opportunity to come back out of the NFC. I just don't see right now. I mean, you can talk Rodgers as long as he's healthy, and Cam Newton in Carolina, and the Saints and Breeze, but I got to be honest. I mean, the road could be there for this team to at least get back to the playoffs, and then once you get in there, anything could happen.
Definitely, Keel, and I've been doing a lot of studying around the NFC East, and when you look at the Eagles' numbers from last year, they're outstanding. The second in the league in scoring with 28.6 points per game, and then defensively, they only allowed 18.4 points per game. So if they can play at that level, they can play with anybody in the NFC. You can make cases around a lot of the teams, particularly the NFC South teams. As you said, 3 of those teams made the playoffs last year. But the Eagles just beat the Falcons. And the Rams, I still want to wait and see if all those pieces can come together. Aaron Donald is a huge case for them. They give the money to Gurley, they give the money to Cooks, and now they're not going to pay their best defensive guy. And then you got people like Aqib Talib coming in. You wonder how that team's going to fit together. But when I look at the Eagles, stout all over. But can Foles be the same guy he was at the end of last year if he has to play a long period of time?
And you mentioned also with Sue. I mean, you're right. They're paying everyone. I also brought up this point. Typically you look at that team that gets to the playoffs that first year and they haven't been there. You want to see the progression the second year. Like, I do think this is a big year for Jared Goff and McVay because, and really Gurley off that contract, because we want to see, can they duplicate their success from last year winning 11 games?
Definitely. And the whole NFC is wide open, but they definitely have to keep it together. You saw Dallas last year. They've had a great season out of Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott, their rookie season, but things can change real quickly in the National Football League. Even the Eagles, look at them, how they've made their progression from one year to the next. Carson Wentz growing from a young quarterback into a guy that was an MVP candidate, made his team a Super Bowl contender. So anything can change, but right now you have to say the Eagles are the champs, and somebody's got to knock them off. I know Dallas is very hungry. They're talking a lot. But you got to see what Dallas can bring in terms of offensive. Just lost a lot in terms of Jason Witten. And then that receiving core just is not scaring anybody. So if you can shut down Ezekiel Elliott and that big line, and then defensively, they're just not the same the last couple of years in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback and that secondary. So they're vulnerable. And we know that the Washington Redskins seem to be vulnerable as well. And the Giants, that defense is a huge question mark for them as well.
Yeah, I think they'll score points, but in the fourth quarter, can they get that sustained pass rush? Speaking of the Giants, I'm curious to get your take on this. The Baltimore Ravens, by all accounts, Flacco has had a great start to training camp. And listen, he's a competitor. We know that. He hasn't been the same quarterback since he won the MVP, won the Super Bowl, and signed that contract. I really don't think RG3 is even a placeholder. I think if Flacco struggles, they will be more adapt to turn to Lamar Jackson quickly. But do you think he's got enough right now in the reserve tank to kind of hold off Jackson? I mean, do you think he's going to make it tougher on the Ravens to make decisions, especially if he plays well early on?
Well, in terms of Joe Flacco, they're just paying him so much money, and as I always say, you got to follow the money. He's still one of the highest paid players in the NFL, particularly this season. And next year, the less of a cap hit. I think it's around $19 million or so if they get rid of him on terms of the cap. I think right now they're bringing Lamar Jackson in, and he's learning the system. Everybody I talk to says he's taking the second-team reps. So RG3 on the roster bubble very firmly, and I think it could turn it over to the kid. But Flacco's got to play very poorly. He's going to need help from the rest of the guys on that team, particularly Alex Collins running the football. Maybe Rashard Perryman finally steps up. I know they brought in Michael Crabtree as well, receiver position. But right now, you have to say Flacco has regressed every season since he's won that Super Bowl.
Listen, we know the Jets are a team that rarely blinks, and you know what? They did. They kind of put aside just, I thought, stupid, silly stuff, especially with the verbiage of the contracts, even though I get both sides, but the mission's accomplished. They got their quarterback in camp, Sam Darnold. With all that being said, you know, I believe out of all the teams with these young quarterbacks, to me, the Jets seem like the team that really that franchise wants their rookie quarterback to start as quick as possible. That's just the way I gauge it. And I don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but that's just my thought. They want this kid out there.
Well, the only other competition you would see in terms of a young guy starting right away maybe be Rosen if he gets the opportunity, if Sam Bradford gets hurt. But I firmly believe what you just said. Darnold is their guy. They're bringing him in. They finally worked out that contract situation. I don't know what McCagnon, the general manager, was doing there. He needed the guy need be in day one in camp. And when you look around that offense, there really is not a lot to build around. The receiving core, very average. I know they brought in Terrell Pryor, but he was banged up last year for the Redskins and just didn't make a difference. We'll see if he's able to do something. But Darnold's coming in, and I expect him to play fairly soon. McCown is a guy who's almost like a quarterback coach at this stage in his career. And then Teddy Bridgewater, I think he's going to be trade bait.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I thought Bridgewater actually had an opportunity where even if he played well, say, during the preseason, you know a quarterback's going to go down. I'm curious, though, if the quarterback goes down, and let's take it to the Eagles for a second, you know they're not throwing Carson Wentz out there unless he is fully 100% healthy. I think the mental hurdle is going to be the toughest obstacle for him to overcome. But can you also envision a scenario where, you know, I think Doug said it best when he said, I saw a little hesitation from Carson Wentz. I mean, if a quarterback goes down, do we start to get back into that conversation of, okay, is Howie Roseman going to trade Nick Foles, especially knowing where his stock is? Or, well, hey, you got to keep him. It's a good insurance policy for what you paid him.
Yeah, and I know they're like Nate Sudfeld, the third-string quarterback, but they don't like him enough to have to be everyday starter if something goes wrong. Right now, Foles is going to be the guy that's going to step on the field. And as you say, they're going to take their time with Carson Wentz. I do expect him to play early in the season, but he's probably not going to play a lot in the preseason. They did avoid putting him on a physically unable to perform list. He's going to be out there. He's going to be taking his reps. But as you're saying, the range of motion and getting the body mechanics back to where they were before he got injured, it's going to take some time. So they're going to keep Foles' insurance policy. And then, you know, if somebody goes down and they wow Howie Roseman, you know, with that same kind of type of deal when Minnesota did with Bradford, yeah, he'll pull the trigger. But it's got to be something very nice, like maybe a first-round pick. But right now I fully expect Foles to be out there, and the team firmly believes in him. And we're going to see if he's still the same guy he was at the end of last season.
Lastly, before I let you get out of here, how about the Raiders and Khalil Mack? I mean, no contract talks between them. You would think they would get something done right now.
Yeah, you know what it is, Q. Right now, Mark Davis, who's the owner of that team, he is building that team around his coach, John Gruden. He's made him the highest-paid coach in the NFL, given him a 10-year contract. And Gruden is going to hold the hard line along with McKenzie, the general manager, Khalil Mack, a guy who they think can wait him out. They have the fifth-year option on him. A lot of these guys that were first-round picks don't like that fifth-round option, but he's probably going to have to wait his turn and then get paid because, let's face it, Derek Carr has a very large cap number, and they gave him a big contract a couple of years ago, and he's first and foremost the first guy. So I think they will get Mack in camp, but it may take some time. Right now he's losing that salary, though, we know. I don't expect him to hold out, though, into the season.
No, neither do I. All right, football is right around the corner. Thursday night preseason Hall of Fame game, Bears versus the Ravens. And then, of course, the ceremonies during the weekend, and we are in full-blown football mode. I appreciate it, pal. We will talk next week, as always. Great job, bud.
All right, look forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Lloyd Vance. Could follow at Twitter at Lloyd Vance. And, again, joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline.